blog. I am your host and writer behind 99geek.ca, Andrew Geczy. As primarily a fiction writer, releasing chapters of my books in weekly chunks on my Patreon, like episodes of TV shows when I'm not trying to make ends meet in what feels like a poverty nightmare. I wanted my brand, 99% Geek, to offer more than just my writing, pulling from my many interests and passions. I don't have much to offer in the way of talent besides my writing, but I'm passionate about pop culture and try to keep myself as up to date on politics, science, and art as I can. Being a huge TV nerd, I run down the best shows of the week, go over all the major news headlines, people who have maybe gotten too tired to follow regular news, breaking it down and expanding it for people who might feel unable to follow along. And before anything else, I spotlight something cool and geeky for the week. Remember, you can follow along by going to patreon.com/99geek. This is Geekly Weekly number 89 for the week of Friday, March 12th. And this week's highlight is Man of Steel / Batman v Superman. I'm sure a lot of you have probably already seen both movies. If you haven't, might you consider doing so? I wasn't sure what to make the highlight this week. Honestly, I was super depressed, and very little except finishing my writing for the week felt like a highlight. I almost made my book the highlight. I was thinking like I could do Royals, I could do any one of my books on Amazon, Dakota Slade even, but I didn't. I did the predictions, and it occurred to me that Zack Snyder's Justice League is coming out this week. I just spoiled it. I just spoiled the predictions. I'm sorry. You don't have to watch the rest of this now. You can just go home. But with Justice League coming out, I thought it might be a good idea to catch you guys up and such. So, if you want to catch up on and be ready for Zack Snyder's Justice League, you don't need to watch Aquaman, you don't need to watch Shazam, you don't need to watch Wonder Woman 1984. You can watch the first Wonder Woman if you want. You can even watch 1984 if you want to do that. But as far as I'm concerned, all those other DC movies are add-ons that you can choose at your leisure. The two that matter is Man of Steel and the ultimate extended cut of Batman v Superman. If you have seen the theatrical cut of Batman v Superman, I think it might help that you have put so much distance between that and seeing the extended cut. Um, Perhaps that was a good call, especially if you have a dirty taste in your mouth from Batman v Superman, or a dirty taste in your mouth from Justice League for that matter. But oh, I just saw it peak a little bit. My apologies. Let me lower the volume on my audio a little bit there. But um, I think that if you give the ultimate extended cut of Batman v Superman a serious chance, you will see that it is not perhaps as shallow as the theatrical cut was. Um, but for starters, Man of Steel, one of my favorite movies of all time. I honestly really think that it is a stronger movie than a lot of people give it credit for. It's everything I ever wanted from a Superman movie. Like I used to watch the old Superman movies, and I'd be like, they're fine. Like I get Christopher Reeves is a good Superman, and Brandon Routh is all sad and stuff when he's flying around in space. Um, but like it was always like, and then he fights Lex Luthor, who has this scheme for real estate, and it's gonna involve kryptonite somehow and be really lame. And it was every movie was like that. And finally, Man of Steel comes out, and it's him actually facing threats that are like the same strength as him, and it was it was finally what we wanted. And I thought it delivered in every way. I thought it was powerful, emotional. I thought Russell Crowe was uncharacteristically great, because I usually have an issue with Russell Crowe. I'm not a big fan of his. um I thought that the music was incredible. I felt that it got Superman in a lot of ways, and I mean, I feel like Superman can do what he does at the end of that movie. I don't know why I'm not spoiling it, but we're not spoiling it. But he can do what he wants at the end of that movie. And then I think that's fair based on where he is as a character and what's going on. And I mean, even in the comics, he has killed before. Like his thing is he doesn't bring justice down on humans because he sees himself as better than them, and he to him that would be the same as like if he decided to kill Lex Luthor because he didn't like Lex Luthor. To him that would be the exact same as killing an ant. And he thinks that he doesn't have the right to do that, and so he leaves human criminals up to human law. That's what he does. That's his move. But like when it comes to superpowered threats that he knows humanity can't deal with, when it comes to people as strong as he is, he takes off the kid gloves. Like when it comes to Darkseid, he takes off the kid gloves. He doesn't spare their life if unless he has good reason to. But like if they're threatening, if it comes between him and protecting if him, someone as strong as him, and protecting somebody weaker, he sees it as his responsibility to ensure the weaker person's protection under any cost, including killing something of equal, like the person of the same strength as him does not have the same benefit of the doubt that a weaker creature gets. He tries. But I mean, therefore, in my opinion, I think it is rather consistent with the Superman character as to how he responds at the end of the movie. And it's horrible that so much of the city gets destroyed during his fight, but much of the movie is watched where much of the movie you spend watching them evacuating. So like that those buildings are largely empty. You've seen the people leave personally. So like and I mean in the comics, parts of Metropolis are constantly getting destroyed all the time. We're finally getting what we want, and then literally half of the audience in the world was like, "This is disgusting. This is gross. These aren't superheroes. This is like I guess it's all people who assume that superheroes were all for kids, and on some level, I guess they are. But I feel like what Man of Steel and Batman v Superman was trying to do was take a more mature look at it. And I know people who saw the theatrical cut of Batman v Superman will laugh at that and be like, ha ha, mature, ha 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 ha. What a bunch of bullshit. It was Batman v Superman is basically the same as adult with action figures banging them against each other. And it's like, yeah, that's true because they cut out like 30 minutes of the depth and plot of the movie to make it fit under 3 hours. If you watch the extended cut, especially without the theatrical cuts, bad taste in your mouth, um, the depth it adds. That's literally the only thing it cut from the movie. Like they could have they didn't cut any weird side plots or anything. Instead, all the plots that were cut were like necessary to the main plot. It doesn't cut action scenes or anything. That all the action scenes and special effect wows are all in the final movie. All it cuts is important like character motivations and important story developments that are necessary to understanding why Lex Luthor is doing all the things he does to get Superman and Batman to fight each other. And without it, it just seems like they're fighting each other for no reason. And it's a much worse movie. And I definitely suggest that anyone who wants to catch up and be ready for Zack Snyder's Justice League, they should watch Man of Steel and they should watch the Ultimate Extended Cut of Batman v Superman. And then you're good. You're good right there. You don't even need anything else. So yeah, and I hope a lot of people give it the chance. Because it's really hard to find the ultimate cut of Batman v Superman, honestly. I was looking on streaming, and every version of Batman v Superman on every streaming platform is the theatrical cut. I don't know why. I don't know why the WB keeps putting that theatrical cut forward. Like, it is what turned public opinion against DC, against the DC universe, and yet the WB keeps shoving it down people's throat. Like, no, you like this version. Fuck you. It's like, why are you doing that? If you buy the Ultimate Cut in 3D Blu-ray, it comes with a 3D Blu-ray of the theatrical version of the movie and then the Ultimate Cut in a 2D Blu-ray beside it. I'm not even kidding right now. And it's not described, it's not explained properly on the box. It's the most horrible case of false advertising like ever. WB is really insistent on forcing people to watch the theatrical cut of Batman v Superman, and it makes no sense to me because it's literally what turned public opinion against Zack Snyder. Drives me fucking mental, but people don't learn. That's the problem. People make mistakes, and somehow they benefit from them, and they never learn. And that's how rich people live. It's different for the rest of us when we make mistakes. Even when we don't make mistakes, we suffer. But when they make mistakes, they somehow end up ahead. No matter what. It's amazing. It's just wonderful. Anyway, we're moving on to the TV rankings this week. Did I mention I was depressed this week? Seems to be coming out all over the place here. Number 11. There are 11 things on the list this week for the TV rankings. And at the bottom of the list is The Walking Dead. It was another boring episode of Walking Dead this week, but then again, I wasn't exactly in the mood to get excited for things. This episode didn't even have any good tension. Though it focused on Daryl, a fan favorite character, the episode just seemed to drag on, and by halfway through, I was hoping it would just end already. It was moderately interesting to see the origins of his dog, and I found the new character they introduced vaguely interesting. At least at first, when she was playing aloof and a loner and kept wanting nothing to do with him. Then they fuck once, and suddenly she's clingy and doesn't even want to let him go for walks in the woods. It was a really weird, and there was no scene between that. There was literally not even like a scene between those two things. It was just like she hates him. They're fucking. She doesn't want him to leave anymore, and he has to stay forever at her side. And it's like, what is happening right now? Throwing down ultimatums and then disappearing when he doesn't like when he's like, no, fuck your ultimatums. Oh, and the dynamic between Carol and Daryl at the beginning felt completely off. It ended up being deliberate-ish, I guess, but it was still far too jokey and silly and was nothing like any of the characters. Felt completely wrong, completely out of character. This episode was just terrible. It was an awful episode of the show, possibly one of the worst I can remember in a long, long time. And it's weird that an episode focusing on Daryl would be that bad, but it was really that bad. Moving on from there, number 10 on the list, Black Lightning with 2.5 stars. It was not. The drama between Anissa and her girlfriend seems annoyingly manufactured at this. Threshold. That's where you draw the line. This episode wasn't great. In fact, at points, it was driving me crazy. Like last week, it was somewhat inconsistent. When it's giving Lois stuff to do, which isn't often enough, it's actually interesting. When it's Superman flying around and goes back and forth, when it's Superman flying around, it goes back and forth between being really fucking cool and super CG looking, but still pretty cool. Like the bridge sequence felt super like I was watching a video game cinematic from the PS2 era. But you know what? I still preferred that to the manufactured drama they keep assaulting us with between Clark and his emo son. The number of times the son just comes up with the most absurd things to scream at his dad about, and then like 2 scenes later he'll be screaming at his dad again, but this time about the opposite thing. Like it's just I cannot deal with certain aspects of this show. It's driving me up the wall. It's so frustrating because I don't hate everything to do with the twins. I especially like Lana's daughter. Her arc has been somewhat interesting, though that talk and hug out with her mom at the end of the episode felt completely undeserved. But when it's trying to come up with reasons for the teens to scream and tantrum at their parents, those are the points I wish I was watching anything else. Anything. Just anything. Moving on from there to number 8 on the list, The Flash with 3.5 stars. This was a better episode than last week, though far from great. I felt the episode this week was at its strongest when Barry's weird gimmick of the week of having super thinking was the focus. There were a lot of really funny moments early on in the episode before his new ability started taking a turn for the worse. They started getting kind of evil and dark with it. But there was some really funny just comedy moments that were fantastic. Caitlin getting speed to fight him was both a highlight and kind of dumb at the same time. uh, but that could be said for much of the episode, honestly. A lot of highlight moments were enjoyable, but not particularly clever. And the episode seemed to be getting dumber as Barry got smarter, but maybe that was just me. I'm glad that we're gonna get a new Wells. I was worried that the actor was leaving the show this time, but no, it was just the usual clearing the field of the Wells so we can have a new Wells, and I'm down with that. This Wells could be the original Wells, so I'm super down with that. I can't wait to see where that's going. So there are good things about the episode, and I enjoyed it for the most part, even though it felt really dumb and I was banging my head and yelling how dumb it was at the screen. But what can you do? Some of these shows are just like that. Some of these shows you just gotta accept that they're super dumb. Moving on from there to Shameless with 3.5 stars. It was a decent episode of Shameless. I was kind of cold on it going in, but it held my interest for the most part. It was really sad seeing everything Frank went through, but I really enjoyed Carl and Mickey's arcs. And Mickey is one of my least favorite characters on the show, but weirdly, when the show is weaker, he always seems to come out stronger. He was hilarious this week. And now, the period, I guess. I was also on and off with Debbie, and Liam did have much going on. And Liam didn't have, I think that's supposed to say didn't have much going on. Kevin, though, Kevin was the most frustrating little moron this week. It was driving me crazy. I couldn't stand Kevin. He's always the guy that's like, he's the Peter Griffin. He's the guy that comes up with these dumb schemes and does anything he can to to he's what he always tries to do things right, but he always fucks up and makes a mistake, and then he pays the price. Only this week it wasn't him paying the price. This week it was Lip and his friend paying the price, and that felt really shitty, especially because Kevin was just like, it's not even like Kevin was whoopsie daisy, I screwed up a little bit, whoopsie whoopsie whoopsie. It was more like, whoops, I did a tiny little mistake, so now I'm gonna purposely do these absolutely horrendous, horrifying things. Just destroy Lip's hopes for anything and his friends' hopes for anything without even consulting them first at all. And just like, all right, let's destroy all these bikes then. And just, it was like he was high and it was insane. And it just drives me crazy. He's a little smarter than that. Surely he's a little smarter than this. This week had him at his peak dumb. And that was rough. He's one of my favorite characters. I hate that. So damn it, Kevin. But other than that, it was largely a fine episode, far from a show highlight. Also, the plot with Debbie and Sandy and the kid was kind of amazing. What was the kid's name? Prince, I think that was the kid's name. And it's just like this nerdy little guy. But the way that Debbie was fighting so hard for Sandy to take ownership of him, considering she's his mom, was sweet and cute, and maybe the best part of the episode. As I said, Debbie was on and off this episode at different points. Moving on from there, number 6 on the list. We're at the halfway point, I think. Are you afraid of the dark? With 3.5 stars, the answer is yes. Yes, I am very afraid of the dark. And you would be too if you could see the Shadow Man. I thought this episode was pretty good. I was close to even giving it 4 stars until the ending fell a whole bunch of flat. I feel like I should raise the volume a little bit. There we go. Fell a whole bunch of flat. There was no reason for that kid to sacrifice himself at the end. Besides, plot, I guess. It was dumb. A dumb ending to an otherwise good episode. Well, I feel like the characters didn't treat Connor with an appropriate level of concern, but I did enjoy all the adorable flirting between the two leads and the mundane, silly school stuff. Connor and his claw hand was a little weird. There was one point early on where it told him, oh, now you're... It goes from peaking to being low, and there's apparently no in between on that. There was this one point in the episode where he had this claw hand. He was just staring at it like, do I masturbate with this claw hand? And then like the next time you see him, he's like approaching the girl and he's like, am I gonna touch you with this claw hand? And it's like, we get it, he has a claw hand. Thanks, move on. Alright, but the stuff with the Shadow Man this week was easy the weakest of the episode. And besides the cliffhanger ending, which included the Shadow Man, so statement stands, yeah, whatever. Anyway, moving on. Pennyworth, number 5 on the list. 4 stars. This is where shit gets good. I wouldn't call this a standout episode of the show, but that didn't keep it from being a hell of a lot of fun. There was so much of this episode to enjoy, from the heist itself, which was a joy, as was the wrestling match it was cut with. The side stories continued to be strong, particularly with Beth and her gay romance. Everything she does is so ridiculously over the top, and it's so unconnected to everything else, but it's hard to care. Finally, Amy Winehouse at the end was a weird song choice. They did roll out her body and we're like, Amy Winehouse. No, they just had somebody sang an Amy Winehouse song, which is weird because this show takes place in the 60s. But I guess that's just like a weird creative choice, kind of like how Westworld has their weird creative choices. Moving on from there. Apparently it wasn't the first time, by the way, that one of Amy Winehouse's songs was featured on Pennyworth. It was just the first time I noticed, I believe. Maybe I noticed last time too. I have a terrible memory. Moving on from there, number 4 on the list, Family Guy with 4 stars. This was a great episode of Family Guy, parodying Terminator 2. The main plot of this episode was a lot of fun, and they really leaned into the gimmick in a lot of fun ways. This episode stayed more on topic than most, but even the throwaway gags mostly landed. Some jokes fell flat, both throwaway gags and the main story shenanigans, but definitely this episode landed more than it didn't. This was perhaps one of the best episodes of the show in a long time. So if you can only watch, if you're only going to watch one episode of the season, maybe check out this one, the parody of Terminator 2. Look it up, it's a good one. Moving on from there to the top three. Bum, 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 bum. South Park at number 3 with 4.5 stars. Meh. It was nice to have South Park back. And being my favorite show, I love the shit out of every second of it. I wish next season every episode would be an hour. Oh, I just realized that I didn't set my thing right. Geekly, weekly, 89, update. It probably won't work, but I will try. Category podcasts. Talk show the podcast. There we go. What was I talking about? South Park. I feel like it could have ended stronger. Nope, wrong button. I love the shit out of this of every segment of this episode, and it ended great. What am I talking about? I wish next season every episode would be an hour. I think the show can pull it off. That said, this was not South Park's strongest episode. There were jokes that didn't land, and I didn't love the whole plot involving the kids breaking up with Kenny. I wonder if that's an implication we might see the show open up to involve more of the other kids more often, like they featured more in the games, and the way a number of them featured in minor ways in this episode. I loved when Garrison showed up at Craig's bedroom and just murdered a QAnon woman right in front of him. Or Scott Malkinson having a major role as one of the little cuties. I also thought the social commentary of this episode was super on point. Treating vaccination centers like exclusive clubs was hilarious. Having Garrison turn on QAnon, and the whole time they don't even get why, because they love him and can't understand why he keeps hurting them. It's great. It's fantastic. God, this show is so great sometimes. When it hits, it knocks the balls straight out of the park. Just straight out. You can't even see them. They're long gone. And despite some, what I felt were a few lame jokes, it was otherwise an amazing, fantastic episode that had me in stitches. Moving on from there to the number 2 spot with WandaVision, also at 4.5 stars. This was a good finale of the show, though I did feel a little disappointed. I feel it could have ended stronger, even while it was still plenty strong. I enjoyed everything with Vision, and this might have been Wanda's best episode. That said, Rambo felt completely wasted. Darcy just showed up to crash a truck into the witch. Jimmy, I don't know what I'm trying to say there. Jimmy Woo, blah blah blah, I don't know. All 3 of the agents seemed to have their arcs rushed to fit like 30 seconds so the episode could focus on Vision and Wanda. I also felt that the ending was a little anticlimactic, and I was disappointed the kids are gone. There were plenty of rumors going around that the show would end with a Doctor Strange cameo and that she would end the show with one of her kids in a car beside her. I'm glad to see the rumors, being spread by trolls trying to ruin others' fun like the Dumbledore spoilers back in the day, ended up being false. Even though the result we got was a little worse than what the rumors suggested the episode would be, it was still a fine episode nonetheless. Moving on from there to the number 1 spot, and this I never saw coming. I almost dropped this show. I almost didn't watch the show. Again, I was depressed this week, so I really wasn't in the mood to watch anything. But I had this show just sitting there on my DVR, and I was just like, do I delete it? Because I don't want to watch it. And then finally last night, I gave it a chance. And I am shocked that American Gods got 5 stars this week. But it did. It got 5 freaking stars. 5. Showing 5 fingers is my hand in case you don't know how to count to 5. I am shocked that American Gods at the top of this list. I waited all week to watch it, constantly putting it off because I was just so bored of the whole thing. I've been depressed all week. But turns out this episode was absolutely amazing, from beginning to end. This felt like a season 1 episode. The cold open with the queer-friendly hotel sanctuary was beautiful and adorable. The trans host was endearing, and the party scene was amazing. The gay sex scene was beautifully shot and tender. And then all the scenes with Laura Moon were amazing as well, with her having some just spectacular lines. And on top of both of those already worth 5 stars right there, there's also Belquist doing her best Tech Boy impression and knocking it out of the park. She was incredible. And then there was a fight between Odin and Tyr. This episode was amazing, from beginning to end, and easily the best episode of the season, without a doubt. If you only watch one episode of American Gods this season, I cannot stress enough how it's this episode. By far, everything up to now has been boring as shit, and then this out of nowhere gave me everything I was looking for from American Gods. Thank you, American Gods, for finally getting it right. I'd be curious to know who wrote the episode this week, because they might need a promotion. Moving on from there to the Geekly predictions. That's 3 things, technically 4, but fourth one doesn't count. Things to look forward to next week. Basically, I'm not guaranteeing that these will be good. I'm just assuming that out of everything coming out for the next week, these will probably be what will most um, most embody the water cooler dialogue of the week. Starting at the top, Zack Snyder's Justice League. I'm sure that's all anyone will be talking about on HBO Max. There's a trailer for it. I don't know why the trailers are all done in a weird aspect ratio. I don't believe that the final movie is going to be in 4:3. I really hope not, but I guess we'll see. Um, I'm excited. Everyone's excited. You should be excited. Remember, watch Man of Steel and watch Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Extended Cut before, and you'll be good to go. I guarantee. I guarantee. Moving on from there to Kingdoms of Amalur: Re-Reckoning on Switch. That comes out on the 16th. And I never played it before, but I've heard good things. I've heard it's like a Skyrim, uh, a poor man's Skyrim. If you can't afford Skyrim, you buy this game instead, and it's just as good, just not as good. And now it's on Switch, I guess. So again, it's not a big week besides Zack Snyder's Justice League. Okay, moving on from there, RBI Baseball 21 is coming to all consoles. That's Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch on the 16th as well. If you like baseball, I hear it's a pretty good baseball simulator, and there's not a lot of baseball games out there, so that could be your thing. I'm not a baseball person, but all of those sounded a hell of a lot better than the fourth thing on the list, which is some dumb Bruce Willis sci-fi movie. Apparently, these people never got the memo that nobody wants to see Bruce Willis try to act in front of a green screen. So if you want to see Bruce Willis try to act in front of a green screen, you can look up what the hell movie I'm talking about. I didn't even bother to write the title of it down. But apparently the reviews are all awful from what I saw. I saw like a 30 out of 100 and a 17 out of 100. So if that's what you're looking for, go for it. But I'm staying far away. Fuck Bruce Willis as far as I'm concerned. I've heard bad things. So about his personality, I mean, he's fine in the Die Hard movies, I guess, except the fifth one, which sucks. But apparently, his personality outside of his acting movies is his action movies. Sorry, is leaves a lot to be required. And even in his action movies, I don't feel like his acting is the best thing of his action movies. I feel like his level of I don't give a shit is the appeal of him in action movies. And it only really works in that regard, which is fine. I mean, he does pull off "I don't give a shit" really well because apparently he really does not give a shit. So cool. Moving on from there, Geekly news headlines. Let's go. This is the news from the past week that you need to know. Starting at the top, Trump isn't magically president again, but QAnon is okay with that, or at least some of them is. I feel like some of them isn't, but what can you do? The prediction that Trump would take office again on March 4th didn't come true. True believers supposedly knew it was false anyway. Sure. This is a story on May 3rd. No, I think that's supposed to be March 5th, 2021, by Vice.com. David Gilbert, blah, blah, blah. QAnon was born in October of 2017 with a post on the message board 4chan that predicted the imminent arrest of Hillary Clinton. The anonymous writer known as Q, who claimed to be a government insider with top security clearance, said her arrest would spark mass riots. By the way they made fun of Q on South Park was wonderful. I loved it. HRC extradition already in motion, effective yesterday, with several countries in case of cross-border. What? I have no idea what's being said there. But then again, that was something that Q wrote apparently, so that's interesting. Moving on. Oh, Hillary Rodham Clinton extradition already in motion effectively. I see. So that's the original message that is suggesting that she is going to be arrested and then that riots and stuff would occur. Bullshit. But that original prediction never came true, and dozens more like it over the last 3.5 years have also failed to materialize. And yet, since that first false message, QAnon has grown into a global conspiracy phenomenon with millions of adherents in dozens of countries across the globe. QAnon believers now serve in U.S. Congress, and a group of followers were part of the mob that stormed the Capitol on January 6th. So it should come as no surprise to find that the latest incorrect QAnon prediction that Trump would miraculously return as president on March 4th had little impact on the faith of the movement's believers. The entire QAnon belief system is built on getting burnt. Julian Field, a co-host of the QAnon Anonymous, a podcast that investigates all aspects of the conspiracy theory, told Vice News. It has never been a problem for the movement. It's been a feature of the movement. In January, QAnon followers were sure that Joe Biden would not be inaugurated as president and believed that Trump would stage a last-minute intervention to prevent Joe Biden from entering the White House on January 20th. When that didn't happen, arguably QAnon's biggest failed prediction, followers glommed onto a new date for Trump's return, March 4th. The March date was based on another fringe movement's misinterpretation of a 150-year-old law and the old date of presidential inaugurations. As the date approached, most of the movement's major influencers decided that they wanted to avoid a repeat of January 20th, when so many believers said they felt let down when Biden became president. So they have to now create buffers so that people need to be ready to accept that their predictions are going to be false, that everything they say is a lie. Those influencers dismissed March 4th prediction as something created by the fake news media to make the movement look dumb. Bullshit. Biggity bullshit. Okay then. In the real world, National Guard troops remained in Washington, D.C. on March 4th due to what officials said was a heightened threat of violence. The Capitol Police said they'd received intelligence related to a possible plot to storm the Capitol by a militia group on Thursday. In the end, nothing happened. As for QAnon followers, that's perfectly fine. Unlike the aftermath of the Biden inauguration, there was no anger or frustration Friday morning within QAnon channels and groups on platforms like Gab and Telegram. Instead, followers said that they always knew that March 4th was a false prophecy, saying that true believers knew not to expect a Donald Trump inauguration. They claimed that the people who had predicted something would happen on March 4th hadn't done their research. I feel like nobody does their research when it comes to Q. Q never mentioned March 4th. Anons are no different than me and you. Don't blame Q for what crazy ideas people come up with, one member of the prominent Q Anon channel on Telegram said. Others mocked coverage of the March 4th predictions by media outlets. The reaction underlines just how used to dealing with failed predictions the QAnon community has become and highlights how QAnon followers can block out the things they don't like. Instead, the movement serves as a way for believers to identify as peace-loving patriots while also hoping for the execution of their enemies. That is all a byproduct of a broader cultural yearning in America for fascism, for hardcore order and law, for the boot of the state and the military to come down onto the necks of those you don't like, those you blame for your material conditions. No, itchy nose. Oh, that feels good. Alright, where was I? And no matter what happens, according to Field, the goal will always be the same. Just because QAnon is wrong doesn't mean that they're suddenly not going to want to see their enemies hanged. Isn't that the truth? Moving on from there. Republicans are using race-baiting attacks to block Biden's civil rights picks, which is fun. Gotta love that. This is a story by Cameron Joseph on Vice.com on May the 3rd or March the 5th. Republicans have launched a series of misleading and racially charged attacks, and by the way, that was by, yes, Cameron Joseph, I said that already. Racially charged attacks against a pair of prominent civil rights leaders in a transparent effort to block Joe Biden's nominees from top slots in the Justice Department. Vanita Gupta, an Indian American woman who is Biden's nominee for Associate Attorney General, and Kristen Clark, a black woman whom Biden picked to head the DOJ's Civil Rights Division, have faced increasingly nasty attacks seeking to paint them as cop-hating, anti-Semitic, reverse racists. Republicans have faced heat for seeking to block a number of Biden's BIPOC female appointees from senior administration posts. But it's more than that. Their attacks against Gupta and Clark are aimed at keeping a pair of civil rights veterans from two of the most powerful civil rights positions in the federal government at a time of surging white supremacist violence, a tidal wave of new vote-suppressing GOP state-level legislation, and a GOP legal push to further dismantle the Voting Rights Act that's made it all the way to the Supreme Court. Ugh. It always comes down to race, and that's what's motivating the opposition to these two nominees, said the Campaign Legal Center's Gary Herbert, who has worked with both Gupta and Clark for years. Kristen Clark and Vanita Gupta are both experts on voting rights. Both have served in the DOJ previously, so they don't have to learn the ropes. Herbert continued. If the GOP strategy is to try to restrict voting rights as much as possible, then delaying these two nominees from taking office is totally consistent with that. That's what's likely motivating the opposition. Coming attacks is a subheadline. Republicans telegraphed their coming attacks on Gupta and Clark during the hearings to confirm Merrick Garland as Attorney General. But it's also long been clear that some Republicans simply don't want the laws enforced with zeal. Since Ronald Reagan's presidency, GOP administrators haven't enforced civil rights laws with nearly the zeal that Democrats have. Multiple GOP senators complained that Obama's Justice Department was politicized during Garland's confirmation hearings, conveniently ignoring President Trump's reign. I know, right? Both Gupta and Clark are DOJ veterans. Clark served during President George W. Bush's administration, and Gupta served during the Obama. So those, by the way, for the record, totally different administrations. One's Democrats, one's Republican. So it's not even like they're both blatant Democrats. But still, the GOP turned against them for whatever reason. During Garland's Monday confirmation vote, Texas GOP Senator John Cornyn said he found it particularly troubling that Garland had defended the pair. One need not look very far back into the respective records to find evidence that they are all about politics in the Justice Department. They're politicians and they're all about politics. How dare they? Weird. Called to defund the police as recently as June of last year. What? Calls to eliminate qualified immunity for law enforcement. What? They want law enforcement to be held responsible for the things they do? That's insane. That's absolutely absurd. All Republicans are against these measures of people being held accountable for things. Is apparently what he's saying. Meanwhile, Gupta has never supported defunding the police. Her opponent cited a comment from 2019 where she said additional resources should be spent on other priorities rather than hiring more police officers to make that false claim. So, instead of saying defunding police, what she actually said was that we shouldn't overfund the police more than we already are. It's literally all she said, and everybody turned that into defund the police. That's interesting. Very interesting indeed. Itchy nose, itchy nose. DDD and Democrats and some Republicans support ending qualified immunity, which shields police from repercussions. Damn right. Utah GOP Senator Mike Lee spent 5 full minutes grilling Garland, not on his own remarks, but on things he claimed that Gupta and Clark had said. What does that have to do with anything? That included a selective quote of Gupta that implied she'd called all Republicans bigots but they are. When she'd been specifically talking about how if justices didn't enforce civil and voting rights laws, they could abandon minorities to the mercy of people and institutions driven by hate, bigotry, and fear of any threat to the status quo. That all sounded true to me. He then accused Clark of anti-Semitic comments and claimed that as an adult she declared, as he put it, that one racial group is superior to another. She was a teenager and was clearly being sardonic, not literal. Kind of like the James Gunn comments. When, for people who aren't aware of the James Gunn comments, basically what happened was, the one that I am most aware of was there was a child molester that got let go, like he got free, he didn't get any jail time or anything, and James Gunn was upset about that, so he said something like, oh, well, I guess in that case I could just go out and molest any kid I want then. And people pointed to that like, see, he's a fucking child molester, we told you he's a child molester, and it's like, no, he was upset because a child molester got away with child molesting. Like, he was being, as this pointed out, sardonic. Anyway, I'm a pretty good judge of what an anti-Semite is, and I do not believe she is an anti-Semite. Garland fired back, as opposed to Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about space Jew lasers and a bunch of Republicans marching in the street yelling, Jews will not replace us. I feel like those might be better signs and for what a freaking anti-Semite is. But conservatives are just full of shit in every way at this point. And I really don't understand how people can continue to stand behind them. And people are like, well, how can you say this about every Republican? It's like, well, because you can pretend like some Republicans are good people, but if they're looking at this kind of bullshit and then they just keep not giving a shit, well, then how can you really argue that they're good people? Anyway, you can continue reading more about that if you want. It apparently goes on for quite a while. And I'm sure there's plenty more about about the fight that they are going through trying to confirm these people and how the Republicans are so full of shit. As nasty as the attacks against Gupta are, some Republicans may vote for her. Only 5 Republican state attorneys generals signed onto a letter that called for Biden to rescind Gupta's nomination on Monday. A number of the Judicial Crisis Network said it was surprised and disappointed it wasn't higher. Aw. That's insane. These people are insane. I hate it. Anyway, moving on from there. Let's get this over with. I can feel my blood sugar dropping. Not fun. Ontario Liberals say they've paid off 10 million debt from the 2018 election. Let's see what that's on about. Ontario Liberals say they have paid off their $10 million debt from the 2018 provincial election in which they suffered the worst defeat in the party's history. Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca says the party was able to eliminate the debt by tightening internal spending and growing its membership and donor base. Some people saying that Liberals can't balance the books. Apparently they did. Liberals went into the last election holding majority but lost their official party status when they won only 7 seats. The devastating loss prompted the resignation of Kathleen Wynne as party leader. Del Duca, who was elected leader last March, says eliminating the debt will allow the party to continue to prepare for the next election, which is scheduled for June 2022. Good luck with that. Moving on from there, Marvel Studios reportedly, that was a story by, was that the Associated Press? The Canadian Press. That was a story by the Canadian Press, which is the Canadian version of the Associated Press. Marvel Studios is reportedly developing X-Men movie titled The Mutants. Interesting. This is a rumor, so don't trust it as fact, but if it's true, it could be cool. And I love picking up on these things nice and early, so let's go for it. Marvel Studios is reportedly developing a new MCU movie titled The Mutants, which could signal a decision to not call them X-Men anymore. Alternatively, I like the alternative read on this, which is that it could just be it's setting up the X-Men. It's like before we have the X-Men, we need to show the mutants and how they're going, and all the trouble they're going through, and then maybe by the end of it, we'll have an Xavier opening up a school for gifted youngsters, with the idea of helping them, the mutants. So I imagine that could be a good first movie, and that could be a great job, do a good job of setting it all up and setting everything up inside the MCU, um, which is something they need to do. So I think it's a good idea. I think it's quite possible, even though it's just a rumor. It sounds pretty likely to me. It's not confirmed though, and the title could potentially change as development continues. So it could even just be a tentative title that changes while it's in filming. With Marvel Studios reportedly making progress on a new X-Men film, the part of the support that will likely surprise many is the title. However, the decision to potentially not refer to the team as X-Men could stem from the name not being as inclusive. Yeah, we're not going to talk about that because I'm sure that will upset some people. There will surely be some comic fans hoping the Mutants title isn't an indication that the X-Men name will be dropped. It is even possible that the Mutants will receive this title because it tells a story about mutants in general and not specifically the X-Men. That's what I'm thinking, and I think that would be a really good idea. This could allow the MCU to introduce or expand the concept of mutants in a single movie with the primary purpose of rebooting the idea of mutants. The X-Men team name could then come at a later point and be used in future movies and titles. I think that's a good idea. Of course, there's also a chance the MCU won't call the team X-Men at all, but we'll have more information on that as we know more. Good for you, Screen Rant. That was on March 4th by Cooper Hood on Screen Rant. Moving on from there. Duterte says, don't worry about human rights, and then 9 activists were killed. This is a story by Anthony Esguerra on Vice.com on August 3rd or March 8th, depending on how you want to read that really dumbly written date. Nobody puts the day before the month. Nobody. I don't understand. Anyway, 9 activists were killed on what's being called Bloody Sunday in the Philippines, 2 days after President Rodrigo Duterte publicly instructed security forces to kill communist rebels. The victims were gunned down in a series of deadly raids in provinces south of the capital Manila on Sunday, and operations that included the arrest of 6 other people, human rights groups said. Among the victims was a couple killed in their home as their 10-year-old son hid under the bed, while others were slain in either the residences or offices. In November 2017, Duterte broke off peace talks with rebels that sought to end a 52-year-old communist insurgency in the Philippines. Since then, left-leaning activists, lawyers, and farmers have been targeted in increasingly violent clampdown, according to rights monitors. And yet still, the right wing insists that the left wing is actually the real fascist. Just because all the fascists in the world are right wing doesn't actually, that's not true. China, India. I'm just going to move on then. The Philippine government and security forces often tag activists and government critics either as members of the Communist Party of the Philippines or their sympathizers. It is locally called red tagging, and some of those red tagged turned up dead. The operations on Sunday were the deadliest in years. Nothing could be more apt than calling this day a Bloody Sunday, Christina Palabay, leader of human rights group Karapatan, said in a statement. The fascist Duterte regime spares no day in its murderous campaign of state terror with the arrests and killings of labor leaders, organizers, activists, and human rights workers. In a rare public appearance on Friday, Duterte told the police and the military to kill communist rebels. I told the military and police that during encounters, if the enemy is holding a gun, kill them. Kill them right away. Ignore human rights. Duterte said, that's horrible. What human being would say that out loud? That is my order. I'll be the one to go to jail. No problem. What the fuck? The violent rhetoric is similar to public calls to violence by Duterte during the war on drugs in the Philippines. So wait, he's telling the world community to just arrest him? Like, it's cool. I will go to jail. I just really want us to kill these innocent people. Okay. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque justified Duterte's kill order, saying killings were not forbidden since the government is at war with the CPP and its armed group. Under IHL, International Humanitarian Law, the president's order is right. Kill, kill, kill. That's a quote that will at no point be taken wrong or yeah, I have nothing. The Philippine National Police maintained that all search warrant operations on Sunday were legitimate. As far as the PNP is concerned, this is a legitimate operation. We have the search warrant, the order from the court. We just implemented the search warrant, as a spokesperson for the police said. The Philippine Commission on Human Rights said it would conduct an investigation while Human Rights Watch slammed the lack of effort to distinguish between armed rebels and civilians. The fundamental problem is this campaign no longer makes any distinction between armed rebels and non-combatant activists, labor leaders, and rights defenders, he said in a statement. Phil Robertson, Deputy Asia Director at Human Rights Watch, said in a statement, the Philippines government should act now to investigate the use of the lethal force in these raids, stop the mayhem and killings that have gone hand in hand with the practice of red tagging, and respect the rights of Filipinos to exercise their civil and political right and dissent, he said. So that's that. Not good. Moving on from there. Trump is in full grunge mode against the GOP right now. This one's more good. This one's fun. This one's one of those fun stories. This is from September 3rd or March 9th, depending on how you look at it, by Paul Blessed on Vice.com. Former President Donald Trump wants conservative donors to stop giving money to other Republicans. Oh, and he doesn't want to help the GOP raise money anymore either. Fresh off his CPAC appearance last month where he listed all the Republicans voted for his impeachment by name, Trump sent an email to supporters Monday telling them not to donate to other Republicans. No more Renos. They do nothing but hurt the Republican Party and all our great voting base. By the way, Reno stands for Republican in name only. Oh, it says that lower down. They will never lead us to greatness, Trump said in an email, referring to what he calls Republicans in name only. Send your donation to Save America PAC at DonaldJTrump.com. You know what's great about that Save America PAC is that he can do whatever he wants with that money. So people are basically giving him money to pay off his debts, is what's going on here right now. And people are falling for it. All these people are suckers and just giving him money for nothing. We will bring it all back stronger than before, Trump added. Though the numbers for the first quarter fundraising won't be available until later this month, Trump's PAC had more than $31 million in cash as of January 31st, according to FEC filings. Trump's email to supporters came just hours after the Republican National Committee rejected his cease and desist letter, demanding that the party stop using Trump's image and likeness in its fundraising appeals. Great, you love to see it. Trump's lawyers sent the letter on Friday to the RNC and the Republican House and Senate campaign committees, Politico reported. On Monday, RNC legal counsel Justin Reimer wrote to Trump's lawyers that the organization has every right to refer to public figures as it engages in core First Amendment protected political speech, and it will continue to do so in pursuit of these common goals. So they're literally duking it out. Reimer also reportedly wrote in his refusal to Trump's lawyers that the former president told RNC chair Ronna McDaniel as recently as this past weekend that he approves of the RNC's current use of his name in fundraising and other materials. So he's just changing his message between like one person and another. Trump's appeal to siphon donors away from other Republicans, coupled with his cease and desist of the RNC, point to an ongoing GOP meltdown about the future of the party post-Trump, which is good, for the record. We love to see it. It just makes them weaker with every meltdown they have. The bad blood is apparently mutual. Representative Tom Rice of South Carolina, one of 10 House Republicans to vote to impeach Trump. I mean, basically, if you watch South Park, this is the equivalence of Donald Trump, Garrison turning against all the QAnon people in South Park, and then them all just totally not getting it. And be like, but you're the chosen one. You're the one that's telling us to do all this stuff. We don't understand. Why do you hate us? The scene where he gets his Secret Service guy to tackle the little girl is the funniest thing I've ever seen. She's just like, she answers the door and the dad's like, "Who is it, hon?" And she's like, "It's it's our one true president and the guy who was unfairly impeached in the election." And suddenly Garrett's just like, "Get her!" And then the service guy's like, "Ah!" And she screams. He just gets tackled head first on the ground. This little tiny like 3-year-old kid. It was hilarious. I love it. But Trump supporters in Congress seem to be already backing a future in which the GOP's campaign infrastructure is replaced by one run by the Trump Organization. Representative Matt Gaetz, a top Trump ally, said in a Fox Business interview Tuesday morning that Trump's PAC is a better fit for conservative donors' money. God, I bet Mitch McConnell's regretting everything he ever did siding with Donald Trump because it's really biting him in the ass now. I think donors should give to the Save America PAC and should really question whether or not the Republican National Committee represents their values anymore, Gaetz said. Ah, hilarious. Moving on from there, progress on Russia. This is an interesting one. This is a story on Vice.com from September 3rd or March 9th, depending on how you read their stupid dates, by Samantha Cole. Mosquitoes are the world's deadliest animal. Over the course of human history, as many as 50 billion people worldwide have died from diseases spread by mosquitoes, including malaria, West Nile virus, dengue, and Zika. One Russian computer scientist refuses to... I'm sorry if you can hear that. That was a weird sound. It sounded like somebody was torturing a mouse. One Russian computer scientist refuses to settle for citronella candles and bug spray. Ildar Rakhmatulin, who studies brain-computer interfaces in Russia's South Ural State University, has a laser and a Raspberry Pi and thinks he can target and zap mosquitoes mid-flight. He claims it can neutralize 2 mosquitoes per second. Wow, that's a lot. That's 120 mosquitoes a minute. Do you know what this means? That's 240 mosquitoes every 2 minutes. Rakhmatulin published his paper titled Raspberry Pi for Kill Mosquitoes by Laser. That's a very Russian title. Online as a non-peer-reviewed preprint in January. In it, he lays out a plan to snipe mosquitoes out of the air using Raspberry Pi equipped with a Pi camera, a galvanometer that detects electrical currents, and a commercially available laser pointer that's 450 nanometers and 1 wavelength, powerful enough to kill a mosquito and blind someone looking directly at it, but not enough to burn skin. Unfortunately, however, Rakhmatulin's research has been halted by winter. So sad. I hate winter. All of the mosquitoes near him have naturally died for the season, he told Motherboard in an interview. It's now winter, and I don't have any mosquitoes for the test, he said. Rakhmatulin explained that this paper and research is not associated with his work at South Ural State University and that he doesn't have any specific funding for it, because heaven forbid he spend money to buy some, like, scientifically culminated, whatever, mosquitoes and use those for his tests. Whatever. In a video, he demonstrates the laser galvanometer adjusting process by showing the red point of the laser tracking a yellow dot around a piece of graphic paper. But that's as far as he can go for now, because it's too cold outside and all the mosquitoes are dead. So sad. In an email to Motherboard, Rakhmatulin that he's working on a pocket-sized device now, but can't demonstrate the device any further until spring. The paper is mainly a thought experiment with some math thrown in. Rakhmatulin goes through several methods that he thinks could work for mosquito murder machine, including training a model on images of hundreds of mosquitoes. Raspberry Pi can't handle this, and better hardware is too expensive. Detecting mosquitoes by color would work in a lab, but not in nature. Ultrasound won't work if more than one mosquito is present, and thermal imaging mosquitoes are cold-blooded. None of this deters him. He plans to experiment with telephoto lenses on servo motors to track the mosquitoes and adding more hardware to give it deep learning capabilities. But the real upgrade is aerial. what ultimately increases the efficiency of the device because it will be possible to use the device using an autonomous aircraft, he wrote, imagining a scenario where a laser could protect a group of moving people who have left a safe territory by mounting an unmanned aerial vehicle or on the human body. He wants to put the flying bug laser gun on a drone, is what I was going to get to as well. Rakhmatulin told Motherboard that the laser is not only for exterminating mosquitoes, but also weeds and pests. So far, we've yet to see a working prototype that actually kills anything. Maybe we'll see it in the spring when the mosquitoes are back. Because again, apparently you cannot afford to just buy mosquitoes. Like if you go online, you can buy ants, you can buy worms, you can buy anything you want, the fuck you want. This guy's just gonna wait until the correct season. Good luck with that. He's a real scientist, guys. Moving on from there, the QAnon shaman just pissed off a federal judge. And there goes his last chance at getting out of jail before his trial. Says Paul Blessed on September 3rd, March 9th. A nice picture of him looking upset. The federal judge overseeing... Oh, this was a story by... Yes, I already said that. Paul Blessed. Vice.com. Yeah. The federal judge overseeing QAnon shaman Jacob Chanzy's case has had it with his media redemption tour. Chanzy, who famously stormed the Capitol on January 6th in distinctive face paint and fur headdress, will stay in jail pending trial after Judge Royce Lamberth wrote a 32-page opinion excoriating both the accused writer and his lawyer for their legal arguments in recent public appearances. In the memorandum issued late Monday, Lamberth rejected Chanzy's request for pre-trial release, writing that his counsel had made meritless arguments and mocked the idea that Chanzy was just a peaceful protester who was victimized during the riots that left 5 people dead, including a Capitol Police officer. He wrote that if Chanzy were released before his trial, he would pose a danger to the public. Not only do the circumstances of the crimes indicate that the defendant poses a risk to public safety, but defendant's actions also show that he will not comply with court-ordered conditions of his release, Lamberth wrote. No shit. The judge also took particular issue with the recent interview Chanzy did with CBS News. The statements defendant has made to the public from jail show that the defendant does not fully appreciate the severity of the allegations against him, Lamberth, a Reagan appointee, wrote in his opinion. Wow, appointed by Reagan. To the contrary, he believes that he, not the American people or members of Congress, was the victim on January 6th. When reached for comment via email, defense attorney Albert Watkins said simply the court's order is well written and reasoned. True. The evidence against Chanzy, also known as Jake Angeli, includes viral video footage of him wearing face paint and a Viking hat as he took control of the Senate dais after rioters breached the chamber on January 6th. Prosecutors also say Chanzy left a threatening note for Vice President Mike Pence that said, "It's only a matter of time. Justice is coming." Chanzy, yes, apparently it was. He was right. Chanzy argued, incredibly, that the spear he was carrying was actually a flagpole with a spear finial, which is, I believe, the top of a flagpole, and that it wasn't deadly because similar poles are used around the country. If the government was actually concerned about the poles being used as weapons, Chanzy said they would not employ them across the country in federal government buildings. Lamberth's contempt for this argument was palpable. By defendant's logic, knives would not be considered dangerous weapons due to their availability in government building cafeterias, Lamberth wrote. The court declines to adopt defendant's readily available in government building standard for determining whether an object is a dangerous weapon. Chanzy's lawyer also argued that the coronavirus pandemic has made it impossible to have meaningful, unmonitored, protracted periods of consultation with Chanzy. But Chanzy made an appearance on CBS News last week, claiming his actions were not an attack on this country and that he'd actually stopped people from stealing and vandalizing that sacred space, the Senate, as well as muffins out of the break room. Thank God he saved our muffins. Lamberth cited the interview as evidence that Watkins and Chanzy could communicate just fine. Given defense counsel's decision to use what could have been a confidential video conference on a media publicity stunt, that argument is so frivolous as to insult the court's intelligence, Lamberth wrote in his opinion. Thank God for this judge who's, like, more judges need to be like this, need to be aware and like, cognizant of what's going on outside of just the court case. They need to understand the nuances and the specifics of the case and the behind the scenes, and too many judges I feel like would ignore stuff like that and would just be like, you make a good point, because you make a good point, I'm not going to look at the surrounding impacts of anything and just give you the win. But this judge is clearly smart and intelligent and open-minded, but also not a fool, and I love it. I love it. Keep it up. We need more judges like him. Moving on from there, scientists discover a chunk of protoplanet older than Earth in Sahara Desert. Let's see what that's about. This is a story again on Vice.com. Everything's in Vice.com this week. This was on September 3rd or March 9th by Becky Ferreira. In the spring of 2020, an amazing relic was discovered in a remote region of the Sahara Desert, an ultra-rare chunk of an embryonic planet that existed before Earth was born. Known as Geczy 002, that's EC 002, the meteorite was forged within the crust of an ancient protoplanet, a small celestial body that serves as a building block for planets. Volcanic space rock is the oldest known lava that has ever fallen to Earth and offers an unprecedented glimpse of planetary formation in the early solar system, according to a study published on Monday in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Scientists led by Jean-Alex Barat, a professor of geochemistry at the University of Western Brittany in France, called that, jumped at the opportunity to examine his extraordinary time capsule from the infancy of the solar system, which belongs to the andesitic family of volcanic rocks and is unlike anything that has ever been seen before. When we saw the first descriptions of this rock, it was really obvious that the rock was unusual, Barat said in an email. Given his past research on another rare andesitic meteorite described in a 2014 study, Barat and his colleagues were also aware that the EC002 was potentially very old. The age was not the sole point of interest, he noted. We were extremely interested by the genesis of such extraterrestrial andesitic melts and on the processes of formation of primordial crusts. Such samples are extremely precious. Named after its landing site within Algeria's Geczy Dune Sea, EC002 consists of several meteorites that collectively weigh about 70 pounds. Wow. The stones, which contain stunning crystals, interesting, were found in May 2020, but earthly erosion of the extraterrestrial rock suggests that they fell in the desert much earlier. It is not a meteorite freshly fallen on Earth, confirmed Barat. It is slightly weathered, but we know since the study of the Tatooine meteorite that terrestrial weathering is fast, even in the Sahara. After procuring samples of the meteorite, Barat and his colleagues were able to pin down when this piece of protoplanet crust, which was partially melted as lava, crystallized into a solid form. Analysis of magnesium and aluminum isotopes in the rock revealed that it dates back to about 4.566 billion years ago, making it the oldest known piece of an igneous crust ever found, reports the study. For comparison, the next oldest igneous meteorite, called NWA 11119, is about 1.24 million years old. That's a lot younger. Much younger than EC002, while Earth itself began to emerge several million years after the formation of these rocks. Huh. Oh, I see. I read that wrong. The next oldest igneous meteorite, called NWA 11119, is about 1.24 million years younger. So it's 4.442 billion years old. Not that much younger, but younger by millions of years. I did that number wrong still, didn't I? It is 4.565. Yeah, that's better. Okay, it's 4.565 billion years old as opposed to 4.566 billion years old. Really not that much younger at all, but still, for us, much younger. Good shot, man. While Earth itself began to emerge several million years after the formation of these rocks, it was still 4 billion years ago, but not quite like that. In addition to its unrivaled age, EC002 is also notable for its unusual composition. Meteorite is 58% silicon dioxide, a telltale sign that its ancient parent body had a crust made of andesite rock, which is distinct from basalt, a more familiar igneous material that is common in volcanically active regions on Earth. Why is my nose hurting? Barat and his colleagues know that these andesitic crusts were probably abundant in asteroids and protoplanets during the solar system's early days, but that they have become extremely scarce in the billions of years since that bygone era. Ancient protoplanets were either incorporated into larger bodies such as Earth, or were blasted apart by collisions with other rocks in the tumultuous crash-prone period of our solar system. EC002 is clearly indistinguishable from all asteroid groups, and no object with spectral characteristics similar to EC002 has been identified to date, the team said in a study, adding that remnants in primordial crusts are not only rare in the meteorite record, but they are also rare today in the asteroid belt. This suggests that the earliest differentiated protoplanets that populated the solar system, as well as most of the debris, were certainly destroyed or subsequently accreted to the growing rocky planet. So they're suggesting that this was from a planet that no longer exists, and that a lot of planets that existed back then no longer exist now. Interesting. The team estimates that EC002 was ejected from its parent body by one of these encounters mere decades after the propeller's crystallized. We're on, excuse me, revealing amazing new details about the evolving embryos of planets during a time before Earth existed. Barrett said that he and his colleagues, as well as other teams, are working to confirm the age of EC002 with other isotopic studies. Researchers also want to study the crystals inside the rock, which are older than the surrounding volcanic material. Wow, sounds crazy. Good luck with that. Moving on from there. Marjorie Taylor Greene is trolling the house. Gotta love it. This is the Vice.com article by Paul Bless on October 3rd, 2021, or March 10th, 2021. Marjorie Taylor Greene has a lot of free time since she was booted from her committee assignments last month, and she's spending it trying to slow down inevitable legislation she doesn't agree with. On Wednesday, the Georgia freshman Republican made a motion to adjourn for the day, a tactical procedure she's deployed at least 4 times in recent weeks in an attempt to slow down the House agenda, this time delaying the $1.9 trillion COVID relief package on its way to passage Wednesday. And despite growing frustration from some members of her own party, Republican House leadership continues to turn the other cheek. Speaking on the House floor Thursday, Greene, who lost her committee assignments after Facebook posts surfaced in which she endorsed violence against high-profile politicians such as Nancy Pelosi, said that COVID relief bill would enslave the American people in debt and called the bill a waste of money and a complete waste of time. Wow. Apparently, helping people in need is a waste of time to her and other GOP Republicans. She then asked for a motion to adjourn, which failed, and then a roll call vote on the motion to adjourn, which forced members to drop everything they're doing, including committee meetings, and returning to the House floor to vote on whether to adjourn. The process can take an hour or so per bill. The motion failed, as it always will, since Democrats control the House, and the bill is set to pass the House today, before heading to President Joe Biden's desk to be signed into law. 40 House Republicans also went on record against Greene's motion to adjourn. Last month, for example, Greene made a motion to adjourn in order to stop the passage of the Equality Act, which would codify protections for LGBTQ people into law. You could just vote no instead of trying to get out of work early, Democratic Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted at Greene after she made the motion last month. But it's not just high-profile Democratic priorities Greene is trying to mess with. Apparently, even non-controversial bills that are usually taken up through unanimous consent or voice vote are fair game to slow down the House. Greene had planned to stop more than a dozen such bills earlier this week, which forced House Democratic leadership to scramble and reschedule the vote, CNN reported Monday. Excuse me. It's frustrating, Representative Fred Upton, one of 10 House Republicans who voted to impeach former President Donald Trump in January, told CNN. Excuse me. My ear just popped. It's frustrating, Representative Fred Upton, one of 10 House Republicans who voted to impeach former President Donald Trump in January, told CNN. I don't see that this is resonating at home, motions to adjourn. I mean, it's just a pain. It's a pain in the ass. Greene blasted the criticism last week. Some GOP members complained to me that I messed up their schedule, she said in a tweet. I'm not sorry for interrupting fundraising calls and breakfast. Okay then. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy hasn't publicly commented on Greene's obstruction tactics, but a clear majority of Greene's fellow GOP members continue to back the motions. It's time to make some changes, and until those changes start taking place, we'll continue doing what we're doing, Representative Jody Hice, a Georgia Republican, told CNN. Personally, I cannot wait for that to lead to all these people losing their jobs when the next election comes. Representative Jim Jordan, a fellow member of the Freedom Caucus, blames the Democrats for stripping Greene of her committee assignments and said this was all their fault. Fuck you. The Democrats are the ones who created that situation, and that's ridiculous what they did. That's wrong. It's wrong what they did, and now they're all upset that Marjorie's asking them to do their job by trying to get out of her job early every single day. I don't have a problem with it, Jordan told the Washington Post. I walked on the floor when she made a motion to adjourn, and I said, Marjorie, you're doing your committee work. Good job trying not to do any work. That is exactly what you're supposed to be doing, is what this guy's saying. Wonderful. So cool. That was that story. Moving on from there, we've got 3 stories left. Disney Plus planning to release 100 new titles per year, says Screen Rant. This is a cool story. This is a story by Nadira Goff 3 days ago. Whatever that means. Bob Chapek, CEO of the Walt Disney Company, revealed hopeful plans to release 100 plus new titles per year through Disney Plus. Disney Plus, which launched in the US in November 2019, and is lauded, has quickly become a fan favorite streaming service. It recently surpassed the major benchmark of 100 million subscribers, though the price will increase by $1 later this month. In just 16 months, Disney Plus has come to be considered a must-have streaming service due to its premium on nostalgia and its critically acclaimed original content such as The Mandalorian, Hamilton, and WandaVision. The streaming landscape is incredibly tough, with new services being announced seemingly every few months. Due to the near flooding of the streaming market, not all services and platforms survive, like Quibi, which shut down after 8 months, and Peacock, which is currently reporting heavy financial losses since its launch. Good. But Disney Plus, which comprises Disney Animation, Disney Live Action, Marvel, National Geographic, Star Wars, and Pixar, has risen quite successfully from the ashes of the failed platforms before it. Due to Disney's ownership of everyone's old favorites and a wide-ranging net of rights to make reboots, remakes, and other originals, Disney is well on its way to rivaling streaming titans such as Netflix, Prime Video, and Hulu. It owns Hulu. In a press release, and in fact, in Canada, all the Hulu content is just available to us, and it's wonderful. We have everything under Disney Plus, just so much content. It's so cool. I've been watching Buffy on it. It's great. In a press release from Disney's annual meeting of shareholders, it was announced that due to the platform's success, Disney has been inspired to be even more motivated in their development of original content. With a target of 100 plus new titles per year, they confirmed this goal would span most of the content mentioned above, excluding Pixar, creating excitement across the board. Last December, Disney Plus made waves by announcing a story of intended and upcoming projects spanning all types of genres, brands, and formats. From a myriad of Star Wars titles such as a Lando series and a Patty Jenkins film entitled Rogue Squadron to a more diverse remake of Cheaper by the Dozen starring Gabrielle Union and Encanto, an original musical set in Colombia with music written by Lin-Manuel Miranda. With that announcement, Disney seems to be on its way to the 100 titles, with more announcements likely to come. That announcement, which rounded out the end of 2020, set the tone for streaming expectations for the next year or two. Disney has always had a way of reaching people's hearts and homes. This is no different. With what is seemingly the perfect setup to flourish in a pandemic and post-pandemic entertainment industry, Disney Plus is likely to be at the forefront of high-quality content production that is beloved by all, even discussed come award season. It is also primed to outpace its fellow newer streaming rivals such as HBO Max, Peacock, and the upcoming rebrand of CBS All Access Paramount Plus. Cool. Moving on. 2 stories left. As GOP makes it harder to vote, few Republicans dissent. This is a story by the Associated Press. Steve Peoples, Jonathan J. Cooper, and Ben Nadler of the Associated Press, March 10th, 2021. Out of Atlanta. In Arizona, a Republican state senator worried aloud that his party's proposed voter identification requirements might be too cumbersome, but he voted for the bill anyway. In Iowa, the state's Republican elections chief put out a carefully worded statement that didn't say whether he backs his own party's legislation, making it more difficult to vote early on. And in Georgia, Republican Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan left the room as Senate Republicans approved a bill to block early voting for all but the GOP's most reliable voting bloc. Duncan instead watched the Monday proceedings from a television in his office to protest. This is what amounts to dissent as Republican lawmakers push a wave of legislation through state houses across the nation to make voting more difficult. The bills are fueled by former President Donald Trump's false claims of widespread voter fraud, and many are sponsored by his most loyal allies. But support for the effort is much broader than just Trump's hard right base, and objections from GOP policymakers are so quiet they can be easy to miss. It's appalling what's happening, said former Republican National Committee Chairman Michael Steele, who condemned the silence of the GOP's elected officials. There have been no provable, obvious system-wide failures or fraud that would require the kind of legislative remedies that Republican legislators are embarking on. What the hell are you so afraid of? Black people voting? Experts note that most changes up for debate would disproportionately affect voters of color, younger people, and the poor, all groups that historically vote Democrats. But Republicans are also pushing restrictions with the potential to place new burdens on GOP-leading groups. It's a startling shift for a party whose voters in some states, such as Florida and Arizona, had embraced absentee and mail voting. Several Republican strategists note that the party may be passing laws that only box out their own voters. There are multiple states and in multiple demographics where Republicans consistently outperform Democrats in early voting and absentee voting, and they need to be very careful because they could be shooting themselves in the foot to restrict that and make it more difficult, said Terry Sullivan, a Republican strategist. If elected Republicans share these concerns, they have done little so far to slow the momentum of major legislation in competitive states like Georgia, Arizona, Florida, and Texas, where Republicans control the state legislature and the governor's office. Democratic officials, civil rights leaders, and voting advocates are horrified. Martin Luther King III said he spent last weekend in Selma, Alabama, celebrating the 56th anniversary of his father's bloody march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Instead of being a day of celebration, he said, there was a sense that the civil rights movement was sliding backward because of the Republican voting proposals. There is no question about this being a higher level of Jim Crow, King said in an interview. He said he's worried that little can be done to stop the Republican effort in the short term. I'm not sure what would make Republicans change other than they lose in upcoming elections, King added. There has to be a maximum effort so that does happen. They're going to get very few votes from community of color. Republicans championing the changes insist they're simply trying to help restore public confidence to the U.S. election system. There was no evidence of widespread voter fraud in 2020, but polls suggest that many Republicans doubted the outcome of the election after Trump repeatedly declared falsely that he was a victim of illegal voting. In an interview, Trump ally Ken Cuccinelli used an expletive to describe King's suggestion that the new laws are designed to disenfranchise African Americans. I take great offense to the idea that I'm trying to keep anybody from voting, Cuccinelli said. There's no reason anybody, no matter what color they are, can't access the system if they're a legal and appropriate voter. In Georgia, the state Senate has voted to limit access to absentee mail ballots to people 65 and over. Has voted to limit access to absentee ballots to people 65 and over. That's weird. Why would they choose to limit mail-in ballots from old people? Those with physical disabilities and people out of town on election day. Legislation passed by the state house would also dramatically reduce early voting hours, limit the use of early voting drop boxes, and make it a crime to give food or water to voters standing in line. During Monday's Senate vote, several Republicans who represent competitive metro Atlanta districts didn't vote, including Senator Brian Strickland. He had tried to amend the bill in committee to remove provisions scrapping no excuse absentee, but was unable to muster enough support. If ultimately approved by both chambers and the legislature, the change would end broad no excuse absentee voting put in place in 2005 by a Republican-led legislature after more than 1.3 million people voted absentee by mail in November. That's insane. In Iowa, Governor Kim Reynolds, a Republican, on Monday signed a GOP-backed bill that requires voting sites to close an hour earlier and shortens the early voting period to 20 days instead of the current 29. Voters will be also removed from active voting lists if they miss a single general election and don't report a change in address or re-register. Republican Secretary of State Paul Pate, who contradicted Trump's references to widespread voter fraud last fall and expanded mail-in voting during the pandemic, did not oppose the new law, but he offered no ringing endorsement either after Latino advocacy groups sued Tuesday to stop it from taking effect. My office will continue providing resources to help every eligible Iowan be a voter and understand any change in the election law, Pate said. Our goal has always been to make it easy to vote but hard to cheat. And in Arizona, Republicans introduced dozens of bills to impose new restrictions on voting, many of them targeting the vote-by-mail system that accounts for 80% of Arizona's ballots. Some of the most aggressive proposals have died unceremoniously. House Speaker Rusty Bowers, a Republican, quietly buried a bill that would have allowed the legislature to overturn presidential election results and appoint its own electoral college representatives. But other measures are advancing, some with the support of Republicans who acknowledge discomfort. The Arizona Senate this week voted to require identification such as driver's license number or a copy of a utility bill to be included with mail ballots. Republican Senator Tyler Pace said he worried it would reduce ballot secrecy and pose a serious barrier to the many voters who don't have a printer at home. The problem is, every single way you look at it, that it gets cumbersome, Pace said during the bill debate. Meanwhile, Steele warned Republican officials that they would face a fierce political backlash in next year's midterm election and beyond if they continue to make it harder for some voters to participate in elections. If you're silent, you're complicit. You're complicit in disenfranchising African-American voters in key jurisdictions across the country, Steele said. They will rue upcoming elections if they stay on this course. It's just insane how everything they do is blatantly evil and yet people continue to support them. I do not understand it. Moving on, Biden's $1.9 trillion rescue signed and agenda now a slog in Congress. You can see what that's about. This is a story by Lisa Mascaro of the Associated Press. Why is my nose so itchy? Associated Press on March 11th, 2021. And this is the last story. Let's do this. Out of Washington. Though it was tough as it was for Democrats, passing President Joe Biden's sweeping 1.9 trillion COVID-19 rescue package into law was the easy part. Now they are hunkering down to push the next priorities of Biden's agenda forward past what so far has been a wall of entrenched Republican opposition in the so very split Congress. It's likely to be a long slog. Popular legislation to expand voting rights, raise minimum wage to $15 an hour, and develop the president's Build Back Better infrastructure package are all on deck this spring and into the summer. But unlike the relatively quick passage of the American Rescue Plan, halfway through the president's first 100 days, sending the next measures to Biden's desk is expected to take months. Democrats are even considering changing historic filibuster rules to overcome opponents and speed the bills along. It will take some time to put all the pieces together, said Senator Debbie Stabenow, Democratic out of Michigan, a member of party leadership. Biden's signing of the American Rescue Plan on Thursday marks a milestone for his administration and for Democrats who have command of the House, Senate, and White House for the first time in a decade. From party leaders to rank-and-file lawmakers, the Democrats are buoyed by what they can accomplish when they hold together as a unified front against the GOP opposition to Biden's agenda. But the weeks and months ahead will prove more politically challenging. Democrats face mounting pressure from within their centrist ranks to try harder to win support from Republicans, especially on the coming infrastructure bill. Multi-trillion-dollar investment in roads, bridges, ports, and broadband that could be even bigger than the just signed coronavirus rescue package. At the same time, the progressive flank is eager to waste no time and take more dramatic steps, including changing the Senate's 60-vote margin required by filibuster rules, if needed, to leave Biden's opponents behind. Senator Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said all options remain on the table. We need a big, bold agenda, just like we passed, Schumer said this week, vowing to do everything we can to get that bold agenda done. If Republicans won't join us in that, he said, our Congress is going to come together and figure out next steps. The next big test will come quickly, even before the big infrastructure bill is fully formed. The House is rapidly setting the 50-50 split Senate, a series of bills that many Americans support, to expand voting rights, raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour, and expand background checks for gun purchases. Democrats are set to use those bills as test drives to assess Republican attitudes. If Senate Republicans start blocking legislation, Democrats prepare to force them into long days and nights of dramatic floor filibusters, like the movie version of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia opened the door to forcing opponents to stand and make their case in the so-called talking filibuster to feel some pain, as he put it, if they want to block a bill. Manchin has been among the most outspoken Democratic opponents of doing away with the filibuster, but he is not alone. While it takes 60 votes to overcome a filibuster on legislation, a tall order in the evenly split Senate that would require at least 10 votes from Republicans. It also takes 50 votes to change the Senate's rules. As many as 10 other Democrats are also hesitant to eliminate the tool. And that's the thing. People are always like, well, but Democrats control it, so why are they still having such a hard time? And it's like, yeah, they barely control by half of a vote. Not even one vote, right? Like, for it to be one vote, I believe Kamala has to literally come in and vote as the tiebreaker. That's the only way they can get to 51 votes. So, like, the fact that, oh, well, they own it all, so they should be having no problem. Well, no, because if even one of them decides, hey, I kind of agree with Republicans, because that's the problem with Democrats, right? They don't stick. They don't have a unified front. With Republicans, they will happily throw their morals aside to stick it to liberals. But with the liberals, they're trying to play fair, and they're trying to be like, well, but personally, I feel like that the minimum wage shouldn't be $15 an hour, and so even though it's the right thing liberally, my personal morals are more important to me, and as a liberal, I need to stand up for my personal morals, and so then he will turn against his party. And you see that time and time again. How many times has Trudeau been screwed over by the exact same thing? And then people say, see, he's the most corrupt prime minister ever. And it's like, no, it's just that the conservatives don't call out their own people when their own people do fucked up shit. Whereas we will happily call out our own people because we're constantly self-policing more than we are fighting other people. It's insane. But anyway, the filibuster gives the minority enormous ability to halt action, and Senate Democrats used it plenty of times when they were out of power. But filibuster opponents say it has been abused over the years, particularly as a mid-century tool to delay civil rights legislation, and call it a historically racist tool that affords minority too much power over the majority. Okay. Which at the one time, the minority was the people of other races. Whatever. There's lots of ways we can test that the next couple of months, said Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat of Connecticut. The House bills headed to the Senate are largely do-overs that stalled in the last session of Congress. At the time, Republican Senator Mitch McConnell, then the majority leader, relished his role as Grim Reaper, presiding over the Senate's graveyard of House Democratic bills. In the weeks and months ahead, some Republicans will likely happily seize the opportunity to give lengthy floor speeches against bills they oppose, as Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, once did, reading Dr. Seuss's Green Eggs and Ham to his then young daughters who were watching on television from home. What the fuck? Many lawmakers fundraise off such efforts, raising vast small dollar donations because people love it when they stick it to liberals any way they can. If it doesn't matter if it was the right thing to do, not to to sign the bill, but no, they will vote against it just to stick it to liberals, and conservatives will cheer because they love it when people suffer, especially when those people aren't them. If in a 50-50 Senate we're stumped on basic legislation by the filibuster, it's just a reminder that McConnell's approach of legislative graveyard is going to prevail, and I think members are fed up with it. Senator Dick Durbin, the majority whip, told reporters on the Hill. So just like how remember that one Republican senator who was like, "This is your fault that Marjorie Taylor Greene is obstructing your shit because you were the one that stripped her of her committee rights. So now that's why she's going to be a total bitch to all of you." And it's like, cool. Well, then we're going to be a total bitch to you and strip you of your filibuster rights. And when you complain about that, we're going to tell you it's your fault for abusing them. And that's just as fair. More fair, even. The outcome of the debates ahead will set the stage for Biden's next big effort, the sweeping Build Back Better infrastructure plan that's already taking shape in public committee hearings and private conversations on and off Capitol Hill. Because again, we can always bring back the filibuster once people are less willing to abuse it. They could always do like a temporary shutdown of the filibuster. Maybe I don't know how all that works, but it would be an idea. Anyway, House Budget Committee Chairman John Yarmuth said he expects it to roll out by the end of the summer or possibly in the fall. Still, Biden's infrastructure package may be one bill that could win over. That's an idea, actually. Why not just have the filibuster, like, have pass a bill that temporarily makes filibuster illegal for the next 4 years, not even 8 years, just make it 4 years. And then at the end of 4 years, assuming that Democrats win all the elections and they control everything all over again, that allow filibusters again, see if Republicans still want to abuse it. If they still want to abuse it, then do it for the next 4 years. If they don't want to abuse it, if they are more reasonable about it, maybe use it once or twice, but not to the extreme that they're threatening, then keep it around. But like have it, have its efficacy depend based on whether or not it's being used correctly or abused. If Mitch McConnell continues to be totally an obstructionist and he wants to use the 60 votes to stymie everything that President Biden wants to do and that the Democrats want to do, that will actually help people by making it clear that Democrats will need to get rid of the filibuster, said Senator Mazie Hirono, which is what I was just saying. We may not be quite there yet, said the senator, whose own views have shifted now towards favoring eliminating the tool, but I am. Huh. Interesting. All right, moving on to the Geekly blog. I love crying about myself, so here we go. It was a tough week. That went really fast, admittedly. I was depressed. Oh, it probably went fast because I went the first 2 days getting an early start. I spent the first 2 days getting an early start on week 2 story. It's already done and ready to go, which is good because since then I've just been spiraling in depression. I don't know if I can even 100% explain it. I think it's partly diabetes. I have in the past discussed how I have concerns that I might have early onset diabetes. I'm skinny, but when working nights, I hated coffee. I worked nights at Tim Hortons, so coffee was everywhere, and I hate coffee. And I would download a lot of pop instead, and I think that it's catching up with me. The problem is I haven't had a doctor in 10 years. I haven't had a physical. Nothing. Not for lack of trying. The problem is doctors just haven't been taking patients for the past 10 years. At least none in my city. I swear I live in the second worst city in Canada. I schooled in Windsor. I know Windsor exists. It is worse. Brackets. But doctors keep being past full and not interested in 32-year-old dudes who are like me. And last time I went to a walking clinic, I remember I started listing symptoms, and he was like, "Oh, we can only deal with one symptom at a time. You're just gonna have to make a separate appointment for each and every symptom." It's like, what? I'm like, what if they are connected? It was insane. So rude. I'm never going to a walk-in clinic again, which puts me in a very dangerous position. And it's been getting worse as that list of symptoms keeps getting longer, now including things like numbness in my extremities and pain in my arm, a lost grip, specifically this arm. The right one. A lot. I'm like very concerned, and there seems to be nothing I can do about it. My life is a nightmare that never ends. You know how I said my numbers were up practically across the board? Well, it was just another temporary blip. And I've dropped back to normal. No one is interested. No one cares for what I'm doing here, and no one cares about my voice. That girl who said that shit about me was right last week. The one who said I'd never make it as a writer. I don't know how she could tell, but she must have seen something. I had 100 people download my Dakota Sade book on Amazon while it was free, and not one person reviewed. No one got back to me. There's, zero hits on everything now. That the books weren't free anymore. I made a new book free now, and that got like one hit. But like, nobody gives a shit again, and nobody's writing reviews. And like, my writing apparently sucks balls, but nobody even was willing to say that. Like nobody that comes out and says you suck. They just it's just nothing. Except for, of course, women who love to tell me on dating apps how much I suck without knowing anything about me. So no matter what I do, I can reach the success. I can't. I can't reach the success of the audience I crave. I feel like I've wasted my life trying, just like my family told me I would. I feel like a fool for thinking I could be as good as the best, for thinking I could be someone. All I get is cast out and smited everywhere I go. Everyone in the world thinks I'm the problem, and my dad used to have a saying: when the world thinks it's you, maybe it's you. So maybe it is me. Maybe there's something wrong with me and everyone else is right. Really does really does something to a person's self-esteem. I honestly don't think I could feel any lower right now. Just give it till the end of summer when I still haven't found a way to survive off my writing and my unemployment runs out and I have to go back to working nights at fast food. I would rather die. And very soon, those could very well be my only options left. There's no light at the end of this tunnel. I thought I saw that there was once, but it turned out to just be more tunnel. Geekly Weekly comments and questions and stats. I don't think there was anything as far as comments are concerned. I did find that on Goodreads, 2 people rated Out on Chronicles with an average of 4 stars. Not bad for a book no one will touch. And it hasn't received any reviews or ratings on Amazon. And in fact, none of my books are under 3 stars. That was supposed to be a end of a thing. And it hasn't received any reviews or ratings on Amazon. Nobody will touch my book or talk about it or read it at all, but apparently when they do, they like it, but not enough for more people to give it a chance. Not that there's enough to get anyone what am I reading now? In fact, none of my books are under 3 stars. Not that that's enough to get anyone to actually read them or give them a chance. Have I mentioned how much I hate my life? Yes. All right. So yeah, life sucks. I don't know what to do. I am so at the end of my rope at this point where I'm losing my mind. I think I'm honestly losing my mind, and I don't know what to do. But my name is Andrew Geczy, and my brand is 99% Geek, found at 99geek.ca. I'm a writer writing monthly chapters of novels like episodes of TV shows, releasing them in 4 weekly segments, a teaser, and 3 acts on Sundays on my Patreon page. Every month it's a different book over a range of genres, and they sometimes even cross over and connect. At the end of the month, the finished chapter is added to the PDFs attached at the bottom of every post. Finally, the finished books are self-published on Amazon. There's a dark fantasy story about a post-apocalyptic world where powerful royals rule and enslave the remaining people, struggling to survive on the last remaining landmass. There's also a sci-fi story about people on a dying world who built a ship to a new one, but their project is almost brought down by a terrorist organization within their own ranks. Finally, there's a crossover story where characters from my other books are brought into the distant future where the princess of a far advanced civilization, one that lives in a solar system-sized megastructure around a Dyson Sphere, needs help defeating her twisted, power-hungry brother. And all these stories will be outside the paywall for all to enjoy as new episodes release weekly, and the finished chapters will be attached to the bottom of every post on the site in convenient PDF format, readable on computers, tablets, ebook readers, and phones at the end of the month. But that's not all my stories. There's also urban fantasy tales about a teenage girl turned into a vampire against her will, or a scorned lover investigating paranormal phenomena, or a journalist covering news and politics in the Middle East. And there's a fantasy story about a fallen angel trying to stop the end of the world. All these stories are published and available on Amazon and are also safe and sound behind the paywall in PDF format attached to an archive at the top of my Patreon page. Only viewable by subscribers, my entire library of work, thousands of pages worth, is easily accessible to every subscriber at any level. There's even a Geekly Weekly blog, which covers all the news you may have missed over the week, as well as ranks a week's worth of television and makes predictions on what new pop culture things might be in the public consciousness for the next week. Finally, I do video game streams, both multiplayer matchmaking as well as single player campaign playthroughs. You can see me play games like Final Fantasy, Call of Duty, Hitman, and more. And you can see it all in one place. So stay tuned and maybe subscribe. It's only $1 and the support you show will go a very long way, I promise. There are also higher tiers. Give $5 one month and you can name a character or look food out of your mouth, so your intention is enough. Say something. Comment here, or at the very least, follow me on Twitter at Andrew Geczy, that's AndrewGeczy, or Instagram at WingCommander4, that's WingCommander, Roman numeral 4. So live long and prosper. May the force be with you. Long live Marceline the Vampire Queen. We are the 99% Geek.